I think we can. We can get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Patabi Raman, and I will be your host for the session today. I would like to thank you all for joining us. We have some really very insightful and educative content in store for you today. Today's webinar is the second of the series titled Introduction to Informatica MDM Hub and Basic Troubleshooting, brought to you by Informatica Global Customer Support. This has been a monthly initiative from the Informatica support team where subject matter experts will be presenting on different products from a support perspective. So you can log into our support portal at mysupport.informatica.com or follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is INFASupport for more details on the topics lined up for the coming months. Our speaker for today is Jitendra Malhotra. He is the MDM product support engineer with over 6 years of experience in helping MDM customers. He is currently the team lead for MDM North America support team and also a support account manager for our strategic MDM account. Before we start, a couple of housekeeping tips. I would request everyone to put your phone on mute so that we have an uninterrupted webinar session. And if you need to ask any question, you can do so by posting your questions in the chat window, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So we will start taking all your questions at the end of the session. Once again, I would request everyone to put your lines on mute. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to thank you.
Thanks, Patabi. Welcome, everyone. We are going to basically have an introduction to MDM, and I request everyone to please put yourselves on the mute. Thanks. So the agenda for webinar is we are going to be discussing about introduction to Informatica Multidomain MDM. We are going to look into what is MDM, why use it, and how to overcome the business challenges. We'll also briefly look into MDM components and process flows. We'll look into hub environments optimization. We'll also look into the drivers for match configuration and how to get to the best version of truth using MDM. We'll look into IDD Timeline and some of the other new features introduced in MDM 9.5.1. And we'll definitely look into some of the troubleshooting guidelines and Q&A session at the end of this presentation. So let's quickly look in MDM. So how does MDM compare to CDI, PIM, or PIM versus MDM? So basically what MDM does is it empowers companies to improve operations with business user access to single trusted view of business critical data about customers, products, partners, employees. So just looking at this particular slide, MDM encapsulates everything or a view of all the different entities within an organization. So it just gives us a 360 degree of relationship among all of these entities, and in a way it helps customers interaction across the enterprise. So this is a typical business environment where over the years all these the infrastructure has been set up where you got all these accounting, sales, customer service departments. Everybody's got, or each of the departments have got their own environment set up, and you have business lines which are feeding data, and then you got application and data sources that are feeding the data. And for a decision maker or an end user to make a decision, it's always very confusing as to which information to rely on. So when the end users start looking into application or some of the data, there's so much of data that people are generally not sure about if a particular entity is a customer, employee, or a supplier. And then what do we know about this particular entity? Is there a privacy preference? Do they have, do they have their mailing address, which is latest? And also, how are all these different accounts that we have for an individual related to each other? So a typical business scenario is going to have all these questions where in this day and age we tend to rely so much on our applications. For example, just talking about a personal experience a few days ago, I checked the weather on my iPhone and it said, yeah, it's going to be clear and sunny. But when I looked out, it was pretty gloomy, and I thought it was going to rain, but because my system's telling me that it's not going to rain, fair enough, I walk out. 2 minutes walking down the road, I'm like soaking wet, and I ran back. But the idea is just to, the reason I brought this particular example is just to demonstrate that we have so much of dependence on the data that we see around us, and sometimes we make misinformed decisions. So imagine if we were to take the same scenario for a CEO of an organization or a CTO or some of the other members of the organization who are really going to make some decisions, and if the forecasts were given like wrong forecasts based on wrong reports generated, then it would definitely have a severe impact on an organization. The stakeholders are not going to be happy. Maybe there's going to be an employee turnaround, et cetera, et cetera. So as an individual sitting to make a decision with all the data which is getting fed into an environment, it sometimes becomes a bit difficult to rely on data because there's no, no master version of the record to rely on. And that's where MDM comes in to help out the users. So this is where master data management solution can really help. Now, before we begin further, I would just like to mention that MDM is not an application. MDM cannot be viewed just as a utility or a tool. It's rather a complete discipline where you need to evaluate the need of the business and then customize a solution based on it. So in a typical business organization, there's a central store, and you got towards the bottom of the slide, you can see all different master sources which are feeding in all the data. And then from the central store, the data has to be sent to for the analytical and operational applications. What is the goal? The goal in this particular scenario is to build and manage the best version of truth so that the data can be fed or taken from all the data sources and fed into all the analytical and operational applications in a unified, complete, and accurate manner so that the decision makers can make proper decision based on the trusted records. So previously we saw an individual who was really all confused, and kindly take a note of it because we are going to go back and visit that particular slide in a few minutes from now. So the idea is to unify information, and as most of you are probably aware, we've got data coming from all these different source systems, which could be a Salesforce, accounting, marketing, and the idea is to unify this data so that the data can be consolidated into the best version of truth or as a master record. And the way MDM or Informatica MDM does is it takes the data through various stages, and eventually through the matching merging, which we call consolidation, the data is consolidated to give you the best version of truth. In this particular example, we've seen data coming from different source systems and adding the data to provide you with the best version of truth. And we are going to keep on providing a few more examples to help understand everyone how to get to the master record. So the challenging issues for MDM are data is all scattered. There's overlapping data problems. And then there's an access control issue. With scattered data, it's difficult to get all the data for a single entity. Data is fragmented. There's spaghetti EDL, duplication of data. Data is getting updated at different frequencies. Accounting might not have updated information, and CRM might have updated information about a particular entity's name, but might not have the updated information about address. That might be more updated in CRM system. So these are some challenges. And even if you've updated all these records, who's got the access control so that the data stays uniform in the future once it's been uniformed at a particular slice of time? To overcome these challenges, what Informatica MDM does is it provides a central store for master data. The benefits of overlapping data are the updates are entity-centric, and it's a single trustworthy record, and spaghetti ETL is changed into inherent synchronization. And in the end, MDM provides centralized data and access control. How we do that, we'll continue through the slides to give everyone a better understanding. Again, looking at a challenge here where data come from all these different source systems, and as the data goes through, based on the understanding of which source system is providing which more reliable data, will create a master record. So we believe for this particular example that marketing's got a more trusted first name followed by middle name from accounting and the last name and address from Salesforce. So what basically when we send the data through MDM processes, what gets generated for the end user is a master record which has got an ID, and it gives you a solid view of a particular entity, which is a lot more reliable than how the data was previously when it was coming from all these different feeds. So this is the slide that we looked at earlier on where the individual who was going to collect the data and make some decisions was all confused. He was scratching his head. He was saying, holy, what do I do with all this data? But through the working with MDM, whereas the person did not know who this record belonged to, now he's able to recognize this person. He knows this person is Joe Smith and he's a premium customer. He's also able to resolve information about that particular individual. Based on the data that has been provided through MDM, he's able to see that this particular individual, Joe Smith, is opted out of email and the address changed in January 2007. And we can certainly relate to this particular account now. Looking into the MDM feed or the output from MDM, it's quite possible that this person's got 6 accounts, and we can also get the relationship about the other individuals in that particular household. So some of the common use cases which are driven by industry-specific correlations, which are banking, brokerage, energy, manufacturing, and pharmaceutical. All these companies wanted to see the data, and these are some of the driving factors where different organizations have adopted MDM. So far, we've looked into some of the challenges and how MDM can benefit a company in overcoming these challenges. Now let's look into some of the components in process flow. And while talking about the benefits and challenges, I remember I used to work in an organization where every 2 months we used to get records from 2 different source systems, and we had to manually go and consolidate those records. And fair enough, once the records were consolidated, months down the road or 2 months down the road, we would get into the same situation. And I'm talking about 12, 15 years ago when the concept of MDM was either not there or it was relatively very new. But I'm pretty sure a lot of other people have gone through that same, tiring process, and that's the reason this whole discipline of MDM has come into existence. Let's look into the MDM components. In any MDM setup or Informatica setup, you're going to look at the hub console, which is your interaction. So the advantage is you're not really stitching any user interface. As a matter of fact, you get two different user interfaces. One is MDM Hub console, and the other one is IDD. And the data stewards can go in and merge records, unmerge records, set up their tasks. You can assign tasks. There's no stitching that is needed straight out of box. And you can also set up your own APIs, etc., based on what the requirements are. In this particular scenario, the middle tier is the application server through which the console interacts with the database. And on the application server, we have the match and cleanse and match, as well as the hub server sitting there. Looking at the process flow of MDM, in a typical MDM situation, you're going to have data coming in through an ETL process into what we call landing tables. And through landing, the data is fed into the stage table. And in this particular process, we end up delta detection and cleansing of the data. And then once the data is in staging, the data through MDM process of what we call the load process, it sends the data into the actual base object, which is referred to as a table. And once the records are in the base object, we send the data through a consolidation process, which is match and merge, and that gives you the best version of truth. And while all the records are matched and merged, we do keep a history of every record, of all the consolidated records. We keep that in the XREF tables, but those are all details I just wanted to briefly introduce you to those things. We are, because we are still discussing about introduction of MDM, we're not going to get too much into those details. And in this process flow, what we are going to see is, as the data comes in, once the data has been consolidated, now that you've got a singular view where Bob and Robert have been matched and merged, John and Johnny, Elizabeth, Beth, the engine will automatically match all these records based on the population. We will look into a bit more about match-merge concepts down the road, but just wanted to familiarize some of you. And once the data has been consolidated, it can just go to the end-user applications through ETL, message queues, and XML, SOAP calls. So let's look into the hub environment optimization. In a typical scenario, if it's just a development environment, you can have everything on a single host machine, i.e. the application server, the database layer, and the cleanse engine. But a lot of our customers would have everything distributed into different environments, i.e. the application server might be on a different box than the cleanse match server, and then the database, which is the master database, and the ORSs might be on different boxes. So we support each of these configurations. And on top of that, for an application server and for the client server, you can also set it up on a cluster on any application server. And similarly, for the database, it can go on a rack cluster. The logical architecture, you've got all the applications on the left side, which are feeding into MDM, which is in the middle. And once the data is all consolidated, you've got master records. These records are being sent to the customer-facing applications, which could be your, your CRM, or could be legacy systems, et cetera, et cetera. So why do we recommend optimizing hub environments? Now, being on the support side, we are always working with customers where the performance is an issue. And one of the major factors for performance is because the the environment was not optimized. So obviously it's going to give you better performance if the hub environment is optimized. And it's also going to reduce effort in terms of troubleshooting and cost. And obviously once the environment's gone into production, you're going to go through change request management, et cetera, to make changes. It becomes that much more difficult. So the idea is to optimize the environment in QA so that prior to moving into production, the environment is optimized. So MDM Hub, as we've seen in some of the slides before, we've got database optimization and the application server. On the database, we've got some recommended Editora parameters. And then on the application server side, we got JVM and connection pool sizes. And at this point, I would just like to mention this, that towards the end of the presentation, I've got some of the important KB articles, which the topics for which we are going to be discussing through this whole presentation. So please take a point at the end of the presentation to note down those KB article numbers, and you can definitely look into those KB articles and show it to the related parties, i.e. your web admins or DBA teams. So let's look into some of the Editora parameters. For our Editora parameters, we recommend a very large memory target and memory max target. We also recommend the PGA aggregate target and SGA aggregate target to be at 9 gig. The reason for very high memory targets is while processing high number of records due to the hash hints in the SQL statements that which are inherent to MDM, it involves Oracle memory, i.e. hashing is done in Oracle memory. If hash temp tables are not created in the memory, then it'll use the temp table and processing will slow down because memory I/O is obviously faster than the disk I/O, which we're going to see. And also towards the bottom of this screen is just a formula that we've suggested to our customers on how to split the PGA and SGA target memory based on the amount of total memory. And this is one of the KB articles which will be listed on the presentation as well. But if you want to take a brief note, note it down. Please share this information with the DBAs. It's always easier to get the parameters changed during the initial phases rather than in the production. These are the Editora recommendations which are listed in our KB article. And once again, we've referred to the PGA and SGA memory, and we've seen over and over again when we are dealing with our customers that having made these changes definitely has an impact on the performance of especially the load and the merge jobs or anything that is related to the database side. And just wanted to let everyone know that our baseline testing is on 10 million records in our QA environment. So let's look into some of the heap size configuration. These are the recommended suggestions, especially if you're in a heavy SIF usage, then keep the max heap equal to or higher than 4 gig. And these are based for the 64-bit application server setting. And just to update everyone, we have, with our latest release, moved from 32-bit architecture to 64-bit. Sorry, is someone saying, can you please put yourself on mute? Once again, if any questions and answers, we'll deal with them at the end of the session. So please bear with us. Thanks. So this is for the stack size. And once again, even I believe somebody wants to say something. Guys, can you please put yourself on mute? So this is the stack size, and there's it's Our recommendations. Our recommendation is 512. Brian, can you, or whoever's speaking, can someone please put yourself on mute? Thank you. So this is based on 64-bit, and once again, setting up the stack size is related to the version of JVM as well as the architecture that you've got where the application server is running. But we've seen that if this memory is too low, we've seen stack overflow, and if the memory is too high, we've seen out-of-memory error messages. And this is for the number of max number of concrete threads. Based on this formula, if you're trying to run 8 jobs and you've got 16 as max thread count, then the connection should be at least 144 based on the formula that we've got. And towards the end of this presentation, we'll again refer to one of the KB articles where we've got the baseline performance recommendations, which we've gathered over the period of time with all the recommendations and suggestions which we've given to the customer. That's a very good KB article, and I would strongly recommend everyone to just take some time and download it, and please view the information in it. So now let's look briefly into the drivers for match configuration. So why matching? So in order to identify unique records, we need to have some way to determine which records are duplicates of each other. And a duplicate record doesn't necessarily mean that it's identical duplicate of another record. It just means that, for example, Robert and Rob in a typical North American population would represent the same name. As I mentioned earlier on, Elizabeth and Beth would be the same name. John and Johnny, and so on. So based on the population, there could be misspellings, there could be difference in the forms, or a name has been misplaced. For example, Michael is a perfect example where M-I-C-H-A-E-L is often replaced by M-I-C-H-E-A-L, so it gets easily distorted. What we do as part of MDM matching, we recognize population, we recognize certain names, and we give you the match. And the matching is basically what we offer is exact matching and fuzzy matching. And exact matching is deterministic, and fuzzy matching is probabilistic. So both these approaches are viable based on your business need. So let's look into the types of matching supported by MDM. And once again, the match process in itself is a very wide topic. And the idea in this seminar is just to familiarize everyone with the concepts of matching. So if everybody wants to see more details on matching, then do let us know. At the end of the session, we'll let you know where you can send your feedback, and we can certainly set something up based on how many requests we get. So exact match base object. When we set up a base object, you can set it up as an exact or a fuzzy. If you set up as an exact match base object, then all columns used in the match rules are exact match columns. It does not bring into fuzzy matching. It does not consider fuzzy matching. And by fuzzy matching, I mean Bob and Robert matching to each other. And then for fuzzy match support, we definitely, if your BO is of fuzzy match base object, we'll certainly support exact matching in it. What are the driving factors for match configuration? There are 3 drivers: match strategy, match columns, and match rules. So your match strategy could be fuzzy or exact. Your based on the population and the batch sizes, and your match columns and your match rules, which could be auto versus manual. It all depends upon the purpose. one of the ways to analyze matching is to take a realistic sample of your data. So by realistic, I don't mean a very large sample, but it should be realistic based on the kind of population of match that you have. So take a realistic sample and run some matches to see how many results you get. Often we get calls from our customers where they complain that we've started matching, but matching is just hung. And when we look into the logs, we are able to see that match is generating, but it's just generating a lot of ranges for the same particular name, and that tells us that based on the kind of data that you have, your matches are not optimized. And the reason for this could be, for example, if you have something like bank off, a lot of data with bank off, or care off, et cetera, that'll try to do fuzzy matching in all these names, and that would create a very large range. And to an end user, when they've started a match job, they'll just look at the job and they'll feel that the job is just hung. But in the background, it's just churning all the matches based on the data that has been provided in the match rules. Here's a sample or an example of what the match setup looks like. In this particular example, we can see that there are a few different match rule sets. The match rule 1, because it's in blue, we can say it's set to auto and everything else is set to manual, and then you have fuzzy and exact matches. And that's typically how your matching would be set up. If you're seeing a lot of records being consolidated or queued for manual merge, then definitely we recommend you to go back and look into your match rules. For example, if there are about 10,000 records sitting to be consolidated manually, and it takes about 3 seconds to consolidate a single record in a manual match, then you can just do the math to see how long it's going to take to do all the 10,000 records. So the idea of matching is just to consolidate your data, but consolidate it in a manner that you have a good performance and the quality of data is, or the data is of good quality as well. Just to summarize, the mechanism for tuning match rules is set on the match keys, which determines how many token variations for the match will be generated. We'll look into the search level, and we'll look into optimizing the filters. That is, if you got fuzzy matching, we strongly suggest to add in an exact match column there. And then the match purpose and match level and the accept limit. And once again, there is no fixed way to just come up and say that matching, here's a magic number to, or a formula to set up your matching. It's all going to depend upon what your strategy is, what you really want to see. And in the end, it's going to be a trade-off between space and precision, or quality versus performance. Let me see if I can demonstrate briefly on what we discussed here. So here's what we were talking about. If a base object is fuzzy or exact base object, this is the strategy that we were referring to. You can change this from fuzzy or exact at the time when you set up. These are the match columns where we were talking about key width. Now with extended, obviously you're going to get more tokens generated. And at this point, we're not going to get too heavy into what tokens are, but just consider that the results that you're going to see, let's say with extended, you might get 10 to 12 tokens, and with a standard, you might see 6 to 8. So it's going to be based on the the disk space versus your precision. And then over here we have the rule sets. In this particular scenario, we got the search level set to exhaustive, and again, it's going to give you that much more search results. And these are the match types, which is set to auto and fuzzy. Sorry, I think my email, I turned it off. My apologies. I thought I turned my inbox out, but it was still hanging in the background. So in a very basic, in a nutshell, match results are going to be based on the kind of setup you have in your match merge setup. And it's very easy to make changes, but it's generally a good idea just to view the match rules and then make the match rules or to optimize the match rules so that you have better matching results. So once matching is all done, we move into merging. Now you can merge the records through a manual merge, or you can merge the records through auto merge. An auto merge process is a batch job. It'll run in the background. The end users won't know. But at the same point, there might be certain records which, based on your certain rules, you don't want them to match automatically. And in that particular scenario, the data stewards can definitely go in and look into the records and make the assessment. And in this particular example, we've got two different records. One is with the row ID of 283, and the other one is with the row ID of 2528. And as we can see, these records have got different first name. The first name for the record on the left is Bob, and the first name for the record on the right is Robert. But based on the match rules, we can determine that this is probably the same address or the same individual or an entity. And also, as we see, some of the information is missing in both of these records. So once you merge the record, it'll give you a consolidated view. Someone's trying to say something? Thanks. So once all the matching and merging has been done, we arrive at BVT. Now, what is BVT? BVT is just the best version of truth. And the way it's assembled is through, we set trust and validation rules. And once the records go through the entire process of stage, load, match, and merge, we get a consolidated view on which we can base our business decisions and make an informed decision. So in this particular example, the top record in the yellow is the master record, which has been assembled through all the different cells based on CRM, finance, legacy, et cetera, core systems. Here's another example of the master record. Master record, the reason we got to this is based on everything we've seen today. This is the most reliable data on which we can make our decisions. And there's a dynamic cell level survivorship. As you can see, each and every cell has been ported from a different source system. And as I've mentioned before, we do maintain all the cross-reference keys, so we can always source it back to which system it came from. And the impact of sending the whole data through master data management is now you have the most trustworthy data across all sources. So let's look into some of the features which have come in recently in 9.5 version of MDM. Let's look into the introduction to data timeline. What versioning or data timeline is, it's basically an ability to give our end users a view from the different time frames of a particular entity. So towards the bottom of it, let's look at the product 101. It basically tells us when did the planning phase start and end, when was the current phase started, and when is it going to end, and what is the future version for the end of line. So through the versioning, you're able to very well specify the different timelines of when an action was performed, who performed the action, and what data was impacted. And this is relatively new with 9.5.1. Some of the other new features with 9.5 are DB filtered. Basically, what DB filtered is, it's a functionality to perform faster search match calls for a given name in a population. Our matching engine depends upon the population that has been presented to it. So with the search match, with DB filtered, one of the requirements that came from one of our customers was that the search match call was taking too long for common names like Mike or Bob. And what we discovered was that even though there was a filter on date of birth, which is the exact filter, the whole process was just slow in the way we were exchanging information between different components within MDM. So we came up with DB filtered. What it does is it just removes all the records which are not matching the filter before it sends out data for the return results. So in a nutshell, it's a much faster API call than using it with match type of none or match type of both. And there's a lot more documentation about DB filtered and IDD or versioning in the configuration guide. Let's look into some of the troubleshooting guides. Why are these utilities and tools available, and what are basic benefits of utilizing these tools? We have Metadata Manager, we've got MDM log files, and we've got test.io as well as the CSM. So the benefits include these are already available and ready. There's no overhead cost. These are easy to use and the access is really easy. They're available through MDM or through our KB articles. MDM console or through KB articles. And it definitely has a benefit on cost and performance. We'll look into some of the features momentarily. So what is Metadata Manager? It's a utility built-in MDM Hub which helps you validate and repair metadata errors. And you can also use Metadata Manager to promote changes from one environment to another, as well as you can also export metadata from a particular environment to another. And once again, no overhead costs. You don't have to do any stitching. It's all built into the MDM console. Let's look into some of the MDM log files. We do depend on various database debug logs. We depend upon the CMX server logs. Also, at times, we've asked for the alert logs and the application server logs. These logs help us in troubleshooting any issues that the customers run into. And we do generally prefer logging to be a debug, especially for CMX server and the cleanse log. And those of you who have worked with MDM in the past, they would understand why debug is required, because it provides us with a lot more information. And setting the logging level to either debug or info is totally configurable. Here's the log analysis. This is the database debug log where the job was not running, and obviously looking at the log, we were able to figure out that the temp table was already sitting, and removing the temp table kind of resolved this issue. Another example from the log analysis is that a customer reported an operation running for a long time and throwing an IDD error message. So once the log was analyzed, support recommended to increase the thread pool queue, and that kind of resolved the issues. So a lot of times when we get the logs, we are able to analyze information based on what's contained in the logs. And sometimes if our logs are not helping or are not providing a lot of details, then we do get into asking the Oracle alert logs and logs from the servers. The other utilities that we have are test.io and CSM utility. Test.io is a utility created by MDM engineering team. It basically gives us the stats of disk.io, and very powerful utility, especially when it comes down to performance-related issues on the database side. There's no extra cost. You can just download it. It's a zip file available on on my support and one of the KB articles. And down a few slides, we will look into the ID of that particular KB article. Then the next one is the CSM, which is the Configuration Support Manager tool. Again, nothing to be done, especially if you're on 9.5.1 version. All you got to do is launch it using this particular URL where you launch the, where you give it the app server name, the port number / MDM support. And it opens up a window. You fill in the window information, and it'll give you this. It'll give you the CSM part of it, and that can be uploaded either to one of the SRs or uploaded to the FTP side. You can send it to us. And as I've been referring to the important knowledge base articles, these are some of the ones which we've touched on today. I would recommend you please take a minute to note down these articles, share this information internally with your team members, especially the Editora one and the Performance Foundation Guide. And those of you who are not familiar with the MDM logging, please take a note of the very last KB article, which is 13687. That explains where to change the logging from debug to info and info back to debug, etc. And information about CSM is very easy to remember, 14.14.14. And if you ever need to download Test.io, if you're running into performance issues, then please go ahead and download Test.io, run it, send us the stats, and we can certainly analyze the stats and give you some feedback. The advantage of using CSM is it also gives us some health check about your environment. So if you run CSM in your environment, it'll certainly help us. It's a beneficial utility which has been designed especially for our customers. And I believe if any feedback, any of you, I'm pretty sure, would have some feedback, please provide it to Patabi. He is the Manager Global Support Infrastructure. Feel free to send your email, or if you're interested in seeing any other webinar, then do so by sending an email to Patabi. And I suppose that brings us to the end of our webinar. We are open for questions and answers. Any questions?
Thank you, Jitendra. This is Patabi here. I have a couple of questions on chat. The first one coming in from Ram Shastri. He asked us if we could please expand CDI and PIM.
CDI. So most of our customers who've been working on the, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of our customers who are working on MDM, they're basically focusing all the entities on the customer because that's what, that's, I suppose, the driving factor. So what CDI is, it's a combination of technology and processes that consolidates data from across the organizations to create a centralized view of a customer. So CDI is very customer focused. It's a service-oriented architecture most of the times. And MDM application, for MDM, the type of data involved in the process varies by industry and organization. But an example would include within an MDM application, you would have customers, suppliers, products, employees, finances, etc. So MDM is a much bigger discipline than CDI. PIM is basically product information management, very focused on the product-based architecture. And again, MDM would encapsulate PIM and CDI. I hope that answers the question.
The second question coming in from Mohan, is there an added cost for Metadata Manager?
For Metadata Manager, yeah, I suppose Metadata Manager is a different product offered by
I think
Informatica.
yeah, this is one of the tools that you referred to in your slide deck.
Metadata Manager?
Good.
Are we talking about master data management or metadata manager?
The question is here, is there an added cost for Metadata Manager?
Oh, within the MDM console. Oh, yes, definitely not. No. I think it's all part of the, when you get the MDM Hub console, it's very much part of it.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed it, the question. There's their product. Sorry about that.
No problem. There is another question from Sanket Das. Who determines the hierarchy of information? For example, finance might have more reliable data than CRM, but may not have all the attributes of a customer.
Right, and I suppose that's the main challenge that our customers do face. Usually, this sort of a decision comes from within the organization. As far as MDM is concerned, or I should say as far as Informatica MDM is concerned, we do not provide any framework to work within. We don't have an architect, we don't give you a particular database framework that you're just confined to work within that. You can create your own database framework and add as many source systems as you have. And I believe a corporation generally makes that determination on which source system is going to provide which cell value as more trustworthy and which is more validated. So that's usually a decision made by the business users themselves.
There is another question from one person called Ram Shastri. Is MDM an extension of IDQ?
No. I think you can have IDQ, work with MDM, but yeah, MDM is, as I mentioned, it's not an application or anything. It's something of a discipline that you really need to think as an end user. The challenge that most of us are facing these days, where the data is there, but in order to take advantage of this data, we need to streamline this data so better decisions can be made. So even though IDQ is basically, I believe what Ram is asking for is some data quality. You can definitely have IDQ plugged in with MDM, but it's separate than MDM.
There's one customer, Samir Mohiddin, who had a question on slide number 13 and 32. So if you could go back to slide number 13, Jitendra. Samir, if you're still online, you could go ahead and ask your question, please.
I'm just heading down to 13. Yes, sir.
Samir, are you still there on the line? You can go ahead and ask your question.
Didn't really have a question. Just wanted to take a closer look at that slide with all the log files name on the screen. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so
I'll just take a minute. Samir's got a question. Maybe Patabi, some other folks might have questions. The idea about this slide is just to familiarize everyone the different logs that we have and the different components that we have. So at times we might be asking about console log or the CMX server log or the cleanse log or the database debug log based upon the kind of issue you're running. Generally speaking, when we are asking for the logs, we just ask for all the logs. Unless there's a console-specific issue, we won't ask for a console log, but we'll just ask for CMX server logs, both of those, as well as the database debug log.
Okay, there is one. Sorry, there's one more question on the chat here, Jitendra, from Subhajit Ray. what is the difference between Informatica MDM Multidomain versus Informatica MDM Registry Edition? And if you could illustrate with an example in what scenario these products could be used.
Yeah, so on the IIR side, I think what he's referring to is IIR. With the framework of MDM multi-domain is a lot larger than IIR. Based on the domain, like basically from MDM, what the end result you're going to get is a consolidated view where there's a very stringent amount of processing that takes place to provide you with one consolidated view. It goes a lot deeper than just identity resolution. That's more or less what IR does. I think we have a KB article on this particular question. If you search the KB, or if you send me or send the question to Patabi and he can forward it to me, I can send you the information from that KB article, as that KB's got everything defined in or described in details.
Okay, thank you, Jitendra. So I don't have any more questions on the chat. Probably we might have time for just one more question. So if anyone has any questions on the phone, please go ahead with your question.
No questions available.
Will the content be available online later?
Yes. So the recording of this webinar will be available on the MySupport portal as well as on our YouTube channel. So the link for our YouTube channel is youtube.com/user/INFASupport. So we have a bunch of videos available on other MDM topics as well, available on the channel.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Jitendra, I think Samir has a question on slide number 32 as well.
That's
32.
Okay. That's okay. I can go take a look at it from the YouTube, but thank you.
Oh, okay. So the URL for our YouTube channel again, I'm repeating this because I'm getting questions on that. It's www.youtube.com/user/INFASupport. INFASUPPORT.
I'm just going to type it. Let me know if that's proper.
But YOUTUBE.
Oh, sorry, I can't type properly.
youtube.com/user/INFASupport. Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Any other questions, gentlemen, ladies?
There are no more questions on the chat. I believe no more questions on the phone as well. So thank you, Jitendra. Thank you so much for the wonderful insight that you provided on the MDM product. So this webinar, the recording of this WebEx will be available on our YouTube channel as well as on the MySupport portal. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a good day and a good weekend ahead.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.